Hey, there are many unsolved mysteries in the world. How did they build the pyramids? Why do planes crash over the Bermuda Triangle? Is there really a Bigfoot? But for most English learners, the biggest mystery of all is, what is the present perfect? Well, that's one mystery I can solve. So today, my friends, maybe for the first time in your lives, we are going to understand the present perfect. Come on, let's go. Right, I need to start this video by making a confession. The present perfect is by far my favourite English tense. Why? Well, it's because it's the most powerful. Think about it. If we think about the past simple can only do one thing. It can only describe actions that happened in the past but are finished. However, the present perfect can describe three things. And before we discuss exactly what these three things are, I want you to understand one thing. The present perfect is a bridge between the past and now, or the past and the present. That's why it's called the present perfect. So, how is the present perfect a bridge? Well, let's look at the first way we use the present perfect, and that's to describe our experiences. I have been to New Zealand 3 times. Interestingly, this is always the first use of the present perfect we teach students. It's usually in pre-intermediate textbooks. And this has always confused me because it's not obvious here what the connection is between the past and now. How is this sentence, I have been to New Zealand 3 times, connected to now? Well, I was born in and now I am still alive. So what this sentence is telling us is, between the time I was born in the past and now, I have these experiences. Do you know exactly when I went to New Zealand? No, and that is key. When we use the present perfect, we must never use a past time, or we must never say exactly when these things happened. It's not important with the present perfect. What's important is simply that I have these experiences. If you wanted to give an exact date or an exact time, then you have to use the past simple. I went to New Zealand in 2002, 2007 and 2008. Here we are giving specific information about the past. So, let's think about what's important here. What's important is we don't know exactly when I went to New Zealand, and now I am still alive. Now my life is unfinished, so I could have more of these experiences. Maybe in the future, I hope I will go to New Zealand again. When we talk about people who are dead, we can never use the present perfect because their life is finished. So the present perfect is only for people who are alive. When we learn this present perfect for experiences, we usually use the word ever. Have you ever eaten a snake? Have you ever ridden a camel? This ever means in your life. And if we don't have an experience in our life yet, we use never. I have never taken the IELTS exam. So, even though this is the first present perfect we learn, how useful really is this language? Well, it's a good way of starting a conversation by telling somebody you have an experience, but then it's finished. To give specific details about the experience, as I said, we have to use the past simple. So these sentences are useful, but in everyday English, we don't use have you ever questions very often. If we did, it would drive our friends crazy. Have you ever swum with a dolphin? Have you ever eaten food that's out of date? Have you ever lost your passport? Have you ever answered 100 have you ever questions in a day? But what if we didn't talk about our experiences in our whole life? What about if we speak about our experiences in an unfinished time period? For example, let's change 19 to 8 a.m. This morning, today. Today is not finished. It's now 5:30. I have plenty of time for more experiences later. But I can talk about my experiences today. Today I have filmed 2 videos, but I haven't eaten breakfast. I'm not talking about in my life, I'm just talking about today. This is much more useful. And we could talk about today, we could talk about this afternoon, because this afternoon isn't finished. We could talk about this month, or even this year. The key is simply that the period of time we are talking about is not finished. In have you ever sentences, that's our whole life, but now we are making the period of time shorter. So that's our first use of the present perfect, experiences in an unfinished period of time. Right, let's move on to our second use of the present perfect. And this is sentences like this. I have lived in St. Petersburg for 6 years. So, how is this sentence bridging the past and now? Well, when did I move to St. Petersburg? I moved to St. Petersburg 6 years ago. This is when the action started. And right now, am I still living in St. Petersburg? Yes, that's the key. This action is not finished. So the connection here between the past and now is that the action started in the past and continued and is not finished. If the action is finished, which tense will we use? The past simple. I lived in Australia for 5 years. Am I in Australia now? No, that's why we use the past simple. For me, I could also say I have been a teacher for 15 years. Help me. I haven't eaten dairy since 2012. Oh, I miss cheese. And I haven't watched a game of rugby since I lived in Australia. Here we have a negative. I haven't done something for a period of time. All of these sentences tell us when something started and the length of the action. And notice, if we tell the period of time, we use for. I have been a teacher for 15 years, that's the period. But if we give the point in time when the action started, we use since. Interestingly, we can use for with the past simple, but you can only use since with the present perfect. And in my final example, here I didn't use a time, I used a second action. I haven't watched a game of rugby since I lived in Australia. Here, the second action is like the time. It's still telling me when. For example, you could say, I haven't been worried about the exam since I started watching my IELTS classroom videos. And that's it. That's our second use of the present perfect. It's used for actions that start in the past, tick, 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 continue until now, and are not finished. So far so good. It's quite easy, yeah? Well, now we come to the third use of the present perfect, and this is where things become a bit tricky. Oh, sorry, just wait a minute. I've lost my notes. I can't teach without my notes. Wait a minute. Which tense did I use there? I've lost my notes. That's the present perfect. Is this a life experience? No. Is this something that started in the past and continued till now? No. Why am I using then the present perfect here? I've lost my notes. Well, when did I lose my notes? Sometime in the past, maybe a short time ago. And why is it important now that I've lost my notes? Well, if I don't have my notes, I can't teach. I have a problem now. And this is our third use of the present perfect. An action that happened in the past, but the result of the action is important now. Other good examples of this are, oh no, I've cut my hand. When did I cut my hand? 5 seconds in the past. Why is it important now? Well, now I am bleeding. Now I am in trouble. Or, I've eaten too much. When did I eat the food? In the past. Why is the result important now? Now I feel sick. Or, I've dyed my hair. When did I change the colour of my hair? In the past. Why is it important now? Well, now this colour is new. It's different, and that's why we use the present perfect. For me, this present perfect is the language of the news. If you switch on your television and something has happened, we use the present perfect. There has been an earthquake. The president has created a new law. These things happened in the past, but the result is new information, so we use the present perfect. The problem, I think, with this present perfect is, when do things stop being new? Let's imagine that today I cut my hair. I have a haircut. Well, later today, I would say I've had a haircut because it's new. People will see that my hair is different. Will I use the present perfect tomorrow? Maybe. Will I use the present perfect next week? I don't know. Is the haircut still new, or is it old and therefore the past simple? This depends on the speaker. As a speaker, you decide if the information is still new, present perfect, or if it's now old, past simple. Even more interestingly, American people don't use this third use of the present perfect. American people always use past simple to describe these experiences. An American person would say, ouch, I cut my hand, or I dyed my hair. So if you hate the third use of the present perfect, just use the past simple and tell everybody you speak American English. But I'm British, so I would prefer if you did use the present perfect. Okay, those are our 3 uses of the present perfect. Experiences in an unfinished time, actions that start in the past and continue until now, they are unfinished, and actions that happened in the past but have a result that is important now. And it doesn't matter which type of present perfect you are using, we always make the present perfect in the same way. Has or have plus a past participle. If you want to make a negative, we use not, I have not, or I haven't, or she has not, or she hasn't. And to make the question, we just invert the subject and has or have. Okay, hopefully the mystery is solved. To check, it's time to practice. I am going to show you 8 sentences and I would like you to decide if the sentence is correct or not correct. And if it's not correct, please change it so that it's good. So, pause the video, off you go. Right, how was that? I hope it was easy. Let's check them together now. Question number 1. I haven't seen April this morning. Present perfect. Is this correct? Well, it depends what time it is now. Is this morning finished? It's 10:43. No, it's not finished, so the present perfect is good. Number 2, I'm divorced. How long have you been married? Good or bad? Bad. The person tells us they are divorced, so the marriage has finished. We can't use the present perfect here. We have to use the past simple. How long were you married? Never use the present perfect to describe a finished action. Number 3, we don't see each other since we left school. Since, ding, 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 present perfect. We haven't seen each other since we left school. We can't use the present simple to describe actions that started in the past and continue until today. Number 4, he's been a teacher before he left school. Well, this one was simply about the word we use to describe the period or point of time. Here, he left school is a point of time, so we should use since. We can only use for with a period. Number 5, I think all the guests have finally arrived, so we can start the performance. Here, it's a good sentence because they arrived in the past, but this information is important now. Now we can start the performance. So we need the present perfect. Number 6. Number 6 to me sounds like a classic American sentence. Here they use the past simple. Ben just started working. When did Ben start? In the past, but he just started. Usually when we use just, we use the present perfect because the information is new. So for me, we should use the present perfect here. But if you speak American English, it's correct. Number 7, about our friend Elvis. Elvis has made 20 studio albums. Well, unfortunately, Elvis is dead. Unless you can see him in the clouds in the sky. So therefore, we need the past simple. Elvis made. We can only use present perfect for unfinished period of time. And when you die, the period always closes. And number 8, scientists have discovered a gene that controls intelligence. This is news. It should be present perfect. It's correct. Great. So that's the present perfect. Well, actually, it's the present perfect simple. We also have the present perfect continuous, and I think this really is the biggest mystery for students. However, once you understand these 3 uses, the present perfect continuous is actually easy. Yes, it's easy. So, for our first use, our experiences, we never use the present perfect continuous. Good news, it's always the present perfect simple to describe experiences. Yay, it's easy. What about number 2? Our actions that start in the past, continue till today and are not finished. Well, let's look at these 2 sentences. I have been a teacher for 15 years and I have lived in St. Petersburg for 6 years. One of these sentences we can use the present perfect continuous, one we can't. Which one can't we change? It's this first sentence. I have been a teacher for 15 years. And the reason why is the verb been. Been is a state verb or a non-action verb. These are verbs which we can never make any continuous tense with. Not the present continuous, not the past continuous, and definitely not the present perfect continuous. I think you should have studied state verbs before. However, to help you, I will put a list of state verbs in the practice activities. In general, they are verbs that are connected with our heart, so like, love, or hate, or our thoughts. I believe or I think for opinion. So the first sentence definitely can't be the present perfect continuous, but the second sentence, I have lived in St. Petersburg for 6 years, lived is not a state verb, so it can be used in the continuous. But the most important question is, why? If the simple sentence is okay, which it is, why would we use the present perfect continuous here? Can you feel any difference between these sentences? What is your Grammar Ninja telling you? Well, let me switch on our native speaker cam so you can feel the difference. Let me read these sentences now. I have lived in St. Petersburg for 6 years. I have been living in St. Petersburg for 6 years. Yes, what the present perfect continuous does is simply emphasize the time period. In my English brain, when you use the present perfect continuous, you are making the period of time feel longer. You are stressing it or emphasizing it. Listen again. I have waited all day. I have been waiting all day. Present perfect continuous simply emphasizes the time period. Both the simple and the continuous are correct, but usually we use the continuous to emphasize. Now, how do we make the continuous? We still have has or have, but now we use been plus a verb ing. So, for our experiences, we don't use the continuous. For our actions that start in the past and continue, we just use the present perfect continuous to emphasize the time period. Again, it's our third use of the present perfect where the continuous does make a big difference. Let's look at this example again. I've lost my notes. Let me ask you a couple of questions. When did I lose my notes? That's right, in the past. How many times did I lose my notes? Once. Very good. And is this action finished? Have I finished losing my notes? Yes. So those are the 3 key points for the present perfect simple. This action happened in the past, it happened once, and it's finished. Let's look at this sentence then. I've been losing my notes a lot lately. When did I lose my notes? Again, it's in the past. How many times did I lose my notes? Once? No, many times. That's what the continuous tells me. I've lost my notes once. I've been losing my notes many times. These are very different. And finally, is this finished? Have I stopped losing my notes now? Well, maybe it's not clear. In the simple, it's definitely finished. It was a one-off. But in the continuous, it might be finished, it might not be finished. We need to look at context. This is a grey area in the English language. Also, very importantly, choosing the simple or continuous can change the focus of our sentence. When we want to focus on the result of an action, we use the simple. I've done my homework, so I can eat dinner. Here, what is important? It's not the action of doing the homework, it's the result. It's finished, so now we can eat. That's important. That's why we use the simple. But with the continuous form, we don't focus on the result, we focus on the action. I've been doing my homework, so I am tired. What's important here is the action of doing the homework. Is the homework finished? I don't know. That's not what's important here. It's not the result that's important, it's the action itself. So for our third use, the simple and continuous are very different. When we use the present perfect simple to describe actions that happened in the past with a present result, these things happened once, they are finished, and we are focusing on the result. But when we use the continuous, these things happened more than once or repeatedly. It might be finished, it might not be finished, or we are focusing on the action itself rather than the result of the action. Now, this can be very tricky to understand, I agree. So guess what? Let's do some practice. Again, I'm going to show you 8 sentences, but this time you have to decide which is better in each sentence, the present perfect simple or the present perfect continuous. Pause the video, good luck, off you go. Right, it was tricky, but could you do it? Let's look at the first one. This person has worked for a company for 25 years. That is a long time. I think the person will want to emphasize this time period. So the best one here is the continuous. I've been working for the same company for 25 years. Here you can use the simple sentence, but it doesn't add the extra emphasis, so I still think the continuous is better. In number 2, you open a letter. How many times can you open a letter? I think just once, so the simple is correct. I've just opened the letter. Number 3 is very tricky because how many times has your boss called? 3 times. This is repeatedly. So maybe you thought the present perfect continuous was good here. If you chose the present perfect continuous for this reason, well done, you are using your brain, but unfortunately, English is a bit strange because we have got the exact number of times. 3 times we use the present perfect simple. Your boss has called 3 times this morning. If we removed 3 times, we could use the continuous. Your boss has been calling this morning. Then we know repeatedly, but when you have the precise number of times, you have to use the present perfect simple. Why? I have no idea. Number 4. The keywords here are for ages. For ages is a really long time, so we want to emphasize it. The present perfect continuous. I've been meaning to call you for ages. Number 5, one of my favorite questions. How many times do you think this person has dropped their phone in the sink? Well, unless they are really clumsy, I think just once. Oh no, I've dropped my phone into the sink. Number 6. This is the one I think confuses many students. I'm exhausted now. Why am I exhausted? I've been running. We want to focus on the action, not the result of the action. So, I've been running, therefore, now I am tired. Number 7 is the opposite. What's important here is not the action of writing, but the result. I have finished writing and now I need to post the letter. Therefore, we use the present perfect simple. I have written the letter. And finally, number 8, please ignore the mess. Why? We have been decorating. Is the decorating finished? I don't know. We're not talking about the result of the decorating, the beautiful walls. We are talking about the mess, because the process of decorating has caused the mess. So here we use the present perfect continuous. What have we learned in this video? We have learned that the present perfect is a bridge between an action in the past and now. And we use the present perfect in 3 ways. First, we use it to talk about our experiences, and that can be experiences in our whole life. I have been to New Zealand 3 times, or our experiences in a shorter, unfinished time period. And that's the key, unfinished. I have filmed 3 videos today. Today, no, is not finished, so I use the present perfect. For experiences, we cannot use the present perfect continuous. Our second use of the present perfect is for actions that started in the past, continue till today, and are not finished. That's the key. I have been a teacher for 15 years. I started teaching 15 years ago, and today I am still teaching. And if we want to emphasize the time period, if we want to emphasize how long the action has continued, we use the present perfect continuous. I have been teaching for 15 years. Yes, it feels like a long time. And our third and final way to use the present perfect is to describe an action that happened in the past, but the result of the action is important now. I have just cut my hand. I cut my hand in the past, but now it's bleeding. Now the result is a problem. And this is the one that can be a problem for students. When do things stop being important now? If I bought a puppy 10 days ago, is that information still new now? Well, it depends on the opinion of the speaker. We can also use the present perfect continuous with these sentences. We do this to emphasize that something happened repeatedly. I have been watching my IELTS classroom videos, not once, but many times, or to focus on the action itself, not the result. But now I do want you to focus on the result, because we have finished our present perfect video. Now your job is to go and do the practice activities, and when you have done them, I'll be waiting for you in the next video where we will continue our course. I'm Shelly and this is my IELTS classroom. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you found the content useful, please click like to help the channel, and don't forget to subscribe for new lessons every Friday. Plus, you can find more expert content at www.myieltsclassroom.com.